Welcome everyone to the HONESTea episode 5, um, which is really episode 6, which is what I was going to say because we started at 0. So if you've been following along, this is actually the 6th time I've recorded, but we're calling it episode 5 because we did have an episode 0. Thank you so much for being here. This is where we spill all of the honest tea. And today I really wanted to chat to you all about ego, which is probably a little bit of a funny thing to chat about. But I feel like there's a lot of misunderstanding and I feel as though maybe the ego's gotten a bit of a bad rap in a way. But I think it's good to just give you some perspective around your ego. And a lot of people will say, oh, he's got a big ego on him. And sorry, this may be a little bit revealing to you. If it is, then sorry, not sorry. But the reality is we all have an ego. And your ego really is just a construct, just an illusion that you've created for yourself. And it is the separation between you and, if you heard episode 1, your melody or your voice, your soul purpose, your alignment with the creator, with source, with the universe, with whoever you want to call it. And I think Wayne Dyer says edging God out. So that's his acronym for the ego. But what I want you to understand is that the ego is a construct that you have constructed to keep yourself safe. And it is the part of you that's taken over when life got on you, when trauma happened, when people didn't treat you well, and you needed a buffer. And you needed a part of yourself that was able to deal with those situations. You created your ego. And so it's the part of us that can be judgy, can be unkind, can be selfish, can be jealous, can be, but can also be self-sacrificing and can be over-serving and that overthinks, you know. It's the little part of you that says, shh, keep quiet, stay small, or don't say anything, or they'll find out you're a fraud. Or say too much, be the loudest in the room. Because, you know, when you do that, people will bow down to you. Or do something that is out of your character, that doesn't feel good. So a lot of times we're listening to our ego. It's that inner voice, right? And I guess it is kind of really depicted by like the angel on your shoulder and the devil on your shoulder, and that. But the ego doesn't sound like the devil, and that's the thing. So the ego is the part of you that says, oh, how rude, like who does she think she is? Or oh, how can he be that successful? He's actually not that smart. Or I can't believe you said that. I can't believe you did that. I can't believe you didn't do that. I can't believe you didn't say that. Now everybody's going to think you're X, Y, and Z, right? That's your ego. How you know the difference between that voice that is your ego and the voice that is your higher self, that is your God self, that is your intuition, that is, you know, whatever you want to call that, that is God speaking to you, is that is in alignment with your melody, right? That's in alignment with your hero's journey. How you know the difference is the other voice sounds like peace, feels like ease. Everything is, when we talk about energy and emotion, is energy and motion, right? Your emotion is your energy and motion, And so when how you feel about something is a really good indication. Is that, hang on, is this coming from my ego construct, or is this coming from my higher self? Is this real guidance? Does this feel aligned and feel good? And a lot of times, it can be difficult to differentiate because, and here's the thing, here's the responsibility, is that we have created this construct because we have wanted for ourselves to be protected, to feel loved, to feel safe. And we've allowed this part of ourselves, this ego part of ourselves, to take over and to become that for us. And we've given that part of us just way too much control. But the reason we've done that is from actually a place of like protection. And that's why what I want to say is that yes, we have given our egos way too much power, but we can break the illusion of the ego by recognizing what it is and who it is. Oh, look, who it is, but that it is a part of us. It's the part that has fear and doubt and stress and worry. It's the part that lives in the past. And when you overthink, like I said, oh, I wish you'd said this, I wish you hadn't said that, I wish you'd done this, I wish you hadn't done that, and you overthink a situation as if you can go back and change that. And you absolutely cannot, right? You can't go back and change it. But your ego jumps in and says, oh, if only you'd done this, or if only you'd said that, oh, I guess, how we could fix that, we could do this. And a lot of trauma response is around over-explaining. A lot of people have trauma, and I was one. A lot of people have trauma, and hey, if I haven't said this before, let me say this now. Everyone's had fucking trauma, okay? Everyone. Because we live in this world. And so you would be hard-pressed to find anyone who hadn't. But my point is that if you have had trauma, then you come up with this construct to protect yourself. And it's that part of you that tries to change it and that over-explains. And, I used to do this a lot, right? And even sometimes now I'm like, oh, I hear myself over-explaining things. And I'm like, why am I doing that? But I very much used to be in this space where I would, try to defend myself as well, defend who I was. And that is coming from ego. Not in a bad way. And this is what I want you to understand, is that it's not the devil. It is actually just a part of you that you've created for yourself to protect yourself. And that when we make peace with our ego, when we see and understand it for what it is, the more we can take back our power and our sovereignty and our dominion over our own lives. And we can say, hey, I love you. And this is this really funny thing. I call my ego Eggy. And I'm like, hey, I love you, Eggy. But we don't need to be afraid. I've got it from here. And a lot of our ego construct comes from when we were a child, right? So a lot of times when I do timeline therapy, for example, or, we do some childhood, stuff, quite often we will find that a lot of the construct is actually a belief system, a core belief that we have held on to from, as I've explained before, we've got trauma that came in with us, historical trauma, generational trauma, and the trauma that we even in our mother's womb were energetically sensing, and also our hearing organ is the first to arrive, and it's also the last to go when we pass away. So we are just making decisions about who we are and what our core beliefs are about ourselves, how we should behave in the world so that we remain safe. And your ego, and this relates to, if you understand your reptilian brain, your ego and also what we would call your autonomic nervous system, right? So the fight, flight, freeze kind of thing is related to this as well. But your ego is the part of you that says, oh, don't do that, Ange. That seems really unsafe. You know, we don't go out and do a podcast, and we certainly don't talk about real things like honesty, and we certainly don't go out there and tell people that we believe in all the things we believe in, because we're probably going to be judged. And God forbid we would be judged. And that's ego, right? Now, my aligned self, my higher self is like, man, and you should absolutely use your voice, because the truth is you are worthy and you're valuable, and somebody is going to see it and hear it and needs to see it and hear it. And so we're just going to put ourselves out there, and we're going to be really brave about it. And it feels kind, and it feels generous, and it feels welcoming. And yes, it's fucking scary to do those things, right? And the ego's the part that says, don't, oh my God, somebody's going to judge you. And then, you know, and then when you're doing it, make sure you over-explain. Oh God, you forgot to explain this bit. You know, even sometimes, and hey, listen, this is kind of how I roll, where even at school, I would do an exam and then I would just hand it in. Like, I never want to reread it. I'm not the kind of person who wants to rewatch movies. I don't love watching the same movie over and over. I've got some favorites that I love. Old school stuff like Sound of Music and stuff like that. Blue Hawaii. But I'm not the kind of person that wants to relive things, right? But for this podcast, right, I often have to rewatch, you know, to pull out bits of it for reels and all that kind of thing. And so when I do watch it back, you know, I judge myself. And that's another reason why I don't like watching it back, because I'm like, oh God, I don't want to fucking judge myself. But like, I'll watch it back and I'll think, oh man, why didn't I clarify that bit further? You know, why didn't I say, you know, just so people don't, you know, they might take it the wrong way, and you should have explained that a bit more. And that's the reason why I don't like going back and watching it, because I don't want my ego to jump in and start saying, oh no, you're not enough, Ange. You know, you should have explained that better. You should have done that better. Because my intention is that I don't have to try and do it better or be better or anything, because I am enough. I am whole and I'm enough just as it is. And if people misconstrue what I say, or if I don't explain it well enough, well, tough shit. Like, I've done the fucking best I can. And that's just where I am. That's the, you know, that's my higher self also says tough shit. You're all fucking good. You're going to be okay. You know, and so that's what I really want you to kind of understand, is that we have given this part of ourselves a lot of power, because we have these core beliefs that tell us that we are not worthy, that we should be afraid, that we get that doubt about the things that we do. When we go to do something that feels, this feels different because I've never done it before. I've always sat in my safety. And I've never done this kind of thing before. And so it puts all of that doubt and fear and worry and stress in our minds. When we're worried and stressed, for example, around money and finances, that's a big one for a lot of people, right? Certainly a big one for me. Oh my God, you know, when you're brought up in poverty, or when you're told consistently that, you know, money it doesn't grow on trees and there's not a lot of it around and all those kind of things, man, that is a huge money wound that needs to be healed, you know. And my husband and I, from the same money wounds, right? And so, you know, there's absolutely those kinds of wounds and those kinds of doubts and those kinds of fears that come up with respect to a lot of people who struggle with abundance and struggle with how to create more abundance. And I feel like that's probably a whole other podcast. In fact, it's probably a number of podcasts, right, to talk about healing around manifestation and money. But my point is that that your ego is something that you constructed. Absolutely. Take responsibility. Have done that because you wanted to protect yourself, and that's fucking awesome. And the reason why I am telling you all of that is, first of all, because it creates separation. So you can understand that you are not your thoughts, right? Because if you can watch and see, and if you ever sit quietly, and I know a lot of people would say, oh, I can't meditate because I just think constantly. True story. We all think constantly, girlfriend or boyfriend or they friend. Doesn't matter. We all do, right? We always think constantly. However, when you quiet your mind, and it does take practice. I mean, when I first started meditating, I think of probably 30 seconds, maybe I could get it most in a 15-minute spin, right? And it takes effort. And even some days now still, it takes effort. So a lot more effort, than other days. But when you can quiet your mind, when you can create that separation, when you can witness your own thoughts, then you can start to understand, now if I can witness my own thoughts, who's the witness? Who's watching the thoughts? And you suddenly realize, oh, I'm watching the thoughts, and the thoughts are not me. And the thoughts are your ego, right? That's telling you to, you better get and do this, right? You better go and do this, otherwise you're not going to get ahead. You're not going to make money. It's even that, I think we did a podcast last week or the week before around success in spite of trauma, right? It's that drive to thrive, to be more and do more and have more. And what I want to say is, there is a difference, right? I absolutely believe we all want to do more, be more, have more. I think that's what we're here to do, to consistently evolve and grow, and I love that part. But it's when the drive comes from a place of you're doing that because you feel like you will find success once you get there, right? So once I earn X amount of dollars, I will feel happy and feel successful. Once once I am in a successful relationship, then I'll be happy. Once I, I don't know, whatever it is. Once I own a home, I'll be happy. Once I get that car, I'll be happy, right? And then you get it, and lo and behold, actually untrue. And there are a lot of people who are really affluent and who have all the things and are still unhappy. And that is because your happiness is not necessarily linked to your abundance. That's the first thing I'll say. And your happiness comes from inside of you, and it is your heart-brain coherence, and it's the part of you that sings, that sees you, that gets you like that, the real you, the part inside of you, that beating heart, soul, spirit, that loves you unconditionally, that adores everything you do, even when you fuck it up. Or when your ego says, oh man, you just fucked that up so bad, girl, and comes in and says, man, I love you anyway. It's that part of you, that's the you, that's the real you. It's not the judgy part. It's not the, oh, you're not enough part, or you're too much part. It's not that part. It's not the part that says, oh man, I've got to rush and do all of these things for all of these people, otherwise they're not going to love me. I've got to be, and we get confused about service, right? It's because it's beautiful to be in service of other people. I actually believe I'm in service of other people. But when we overserve to a place of self-deprivation, that's a completely different place. So to make peace with your ego is to, like I said, I gave mine a name because it just felt at the time when I was going through this process, and I would witness my ego coming up, and witness a fear or worry or a doubt or a shame, because these are all really low vibrational emotions, energy and motion, low vibrational energies. And we will do an episode on energy that looks into those types of frequencies and that kind of thing. But your frequency is unconditional love. And your frequency has its own vibe, its own melody, its own, and I've spoken about that before. And when you're on your hero's journey, right, and you're living in resonance with it, it feels really, really good. And when you feel shame and doubt and worry and fear, it doesn't feel good. That's the ego. And so to make peace with your ego, the way I did it is that I would say, oh, I see you, Iggy. I see you. I see you, Iggy. And sometimes it was fear, sometimes it was doubt, sometimes it was loneliness, and it's okay to feel whatever you feel. Look, and I also want to say there's no wrong emotions, right? And there's no judgment. But to make peace with, I see you, Iggy. I can see that you feel inferior in this moment. I can see that you're feeling as though you're unloved. A big part of my my ego was always feeling, and if you know anything about the law of attraction, is around the universe doesn't respond to what you say, it responds to how you feel. And so I always had this kind of big personality and bravado, and I think people would probably think I'm pretty out there and strong, independent woman. And yep, there's definitely parts of me that are, but there's really has been for a very long time since I was my very first wound was around abandonment. There's a part of me in certain situations in my life that is incredibly needy, that feels abandoned, that feels as though people don't love me enough to include me. And so when I was feeling that way, which was a lot of the time, and sometimes that old wound still comes up, I'm not going to lie, I'm not fully healed myself, there's still, I say, there's still, I can see, there's a little bit more there, just when I think I'm good, I'm like, there's another layer, whoa, but I can see it for myself, and I know exactly what it is, and I know it's eggy, right? I know. And so this need of mine is to be accepted, to be included. And so I would always beg people, it felt like begging to me. I was begging. In my heart, I was begging. Can you include me? I have actually, physically said to my sisters in particular, can you please just include me? I want to be included. And they would say, you don't have to be asked. You're our sister. And I'd say, well, how do I make myself included? Do I just have to check with you all the time just to see if you guys are doing something, just in case, But it wasn't my sister's fault, and this is what I want to say, because it was happening. I was begging my sisters to be in their lives. I was begging them to include me, but my life was showing up in my ego state, which was, please need me. I feel so, I feel so small. I feel like I'm not needed. And of course my energy was that, and so my life was predictably giving me that same experience. It was giving me back the experience of being abandoned, of not feeling loved, and I was needy in my relationship, particularly my first relationship, that's why I stayed so long in that relationship, even though it was horrendous, there was verbal and physical violence, that ended up being physical violence, oh my God, it was, but I was manifesting that. I was choosing that because I was so needy, and I was begging and needing to be wanted in anything. And then, in other, and even in my marriage that I'm in now, there was a time when I felt so needy in that relationship, with my friendships, with my other family, my extended family. I would be like, why didn't you invite me? Why aren't you including me? Why aren't you, like just so needy. I think I've mentioned this before, that when you are needy like that, the universe, God, it gives you more needy. And this is not because God's not a loving God. God is an absolutely loving God, and you are creating this experience for yourself to give yourself the experience and go, hey, how can I heal that? Look how many times you beg and you plead and you want to be included and you're not. Do you get that there's a pattern here yet, Ange? Can you see that you keep begging to be wanted and to be loved and you're getting the opposite? Is there something going on? And suddenly you realize there's a wound here. There's something that needs to be healed. And what my ego would do is that my ego would be out there, trying to rally people around and say, well, they don't include me. They don't love me. Why don't they love me? Thinking that would help the situation. It was only making things worse. Or my ego would be telling me, well, this is because they don't really love you, because they're bad people, and they are then, like you, and you're not lovable. You're actually not lovable. And and this is your fault. This is completely your fault. If you didn't share your trauma story, then, if you didn't start talking about your trauma, they told you that you're ungrateful, and now look what's happened to you. And that was the ego. And when I started to realize, this isn't me. This is a construct that is telling me that I'm not worthy. That's telling me that people don't love me, that I'm unlovable, that I don't deserve to be loved, that I don't deserve to be included, or that they're bad people, to try to control the situation. Because that's what the ego does. It tries to control the situation, control the narrative, right? And works overtime to do that, which is also the overthinking. And when I recognize that and realize that for myself, then, and I could make peace with it. And the way I did it was to say, hey, Iggy, I see you. I see you, and I see your hurt, and I see your pain, and I see how unworthy you feel, and how sad you feel, when you're not included, and how awful that can be for you. But I want you to know that I've got us, and I love you. It's making me emotional, right? But I want you to know that I've got us, and I love you, and we're okay, and we will be okay, even on our own, and we're never really alone. I don't even believe that either. But yeah, when you can make peace with that, the less often that happens, So now, whenever I feel doubt or fear or worry or stress, I can see it. Like I give it a physical thing. For me, that works, and I make peace with it. And I'm like, hey, Iggy, hey, doubt, I see you, and I just want you to know that I love you and I appreciate you for showing up. But I've got this. And I know God's got me. And I know that the universe is conspiring for my success and wants more for me. And so I don't need to stress and worry and have fear and have doubt, Or, thank you, fear. I can see you. And you know what? Thank you for coming along for the journey. We're going to go anyway. You can come with. And it's going to feel scary, but I'm going to do it anyway. And then once you get through it, feels like, don't have to be here anymore. And the more you do that, the more you recognize every time that ego construct comes up, that's just trying to protect you, that has been in charge for so long that it doesn't realize that you've got this now, like the real you's got this, not that construct that separates you from yourself, that separates you from your melody, that separates you from your God. When you recognize that that's a thing, then it needs to turn up less and less. And the more you can lean into who you are, and the braver you become, and the more resilient you become, the more loving you become, the more available and vulnerable you become. And that's where I'm trying to get us all to, right? I'm hoping that and me being more vulnerable and more honest with myself, with you, that we're all going to get to a place where we're able to make peace with that ourselves, our real selves, our true selves, our soul selves, our spirit selves, whatever you want to call it, our higher mind, our, it doesn't matter to me what you call it. When we're able to shift and adjust and become more of who we are, so that we can live fully in our hero's journey and play our own song and dance to our own tune and be part of the orchestra. When we can do all of that, that's the whole purpose of this podcast. That's the honest truth. That's the honest tea. So, yeah, I'm going to leave it at that. I hope that gives you more of an understanding. Make peace with that version of you, because that version of you has just been around to love on you in its own weird way. It's been protecting you and keeping you safe, but, the part of you that really now is ready, I hope that I give you some opportunity to be a bit braver and to make peace with all of those little parts of you that have tried to protect you up until now, and to understand that they are not really you, and that you will go on and you will heal deeply and lead boldly and live fully. And as always, I just appreciate you so much, more than you will ever know. And I love you, and I am looking forward to chatting to you again in the next episode. Thank you so much. Mwah.